Welcome to Imaginative Visions Journeys, where creators from the entertainment world discuss their journey to turning their dreams into reality. With your host, Justin D. Williams.
Hey, thank you, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Talks of Geeks and Imaginative Visions Journeys. So we are going to be having a really great guest for us today. We have actor, writer, producer. We have Duane Murray here. He's going to be talking about his new book, Better Place. And we're going to kick it off. Duane, welcome. How you doing?
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. I'm doing all right. I'm doing pretty good. My cat's sleeping beside me. I hope she stays nice and quiet. I never know with her.
That's the thing about cats. Let's just kick this off. First, let's talk a little bit first about your origins. When did you find the passion for acting and writing? Do you remember the exact moment where you said, "Hey, I definitely want to do this for a living," or when you discovered your passion for it?
I don't I don't remember the exact moment. When I was a kid, I just enjoyed doing things. Like I wrote stories when I was a kid. I won this little writing contest when I was in grade 6. I wrote a story about different kids' reactions to the announcement that there was going to be a nuclear war. I grew up in the 80s, so that was that was a thing for us all the time. And I wrote this story that just different points of view from different kids from around the world and what that meant to them. And it won this contest, and it got published. And that was so long ago. And I always wrote after that. And I wrote sketches with my best friend in high school, who was early on was part of the story of Better Place for me. And I acted in a lot of our little films that we made together. And then it wasn't until like just before I was choosing university that I realized, you can study acting like at a school. And so I actually went to school for acting and just kind of wrote on the side. And the writing journey was a lot more weird than the acting journey. The acting journey was pretty standard. I went to a theater school. I got an agent. I started auditioning, started getting work, and I'm still doing it. And that's a little more standard. Whereas writing came out of necessity, really, for me, just wanting to write stuff. And now having this book published, I couldn't give a class on how to do it because I don't know how it happened. It just kind of happened, and I hope to keep making it happen and do it some more since graphic novels and comics were actually my first love, but because I was in acting, it seemed natural to write for film and plays. And so that's what I did early on. And so Better Place was originally thought of as a film script, but it was very different. And it bounced around, and then the rights came back to me, and I thought, it never dawned on me to make it a graphic novel until that came back to me. And I realized, you know what, I want to make this, and I want to make this on my terms. And so I brought on the artist, Sean. He agreed to come on, and we made the book.
Oh, wow. I mean, and let's dive into that a little bit more, especially with Better Place. You said that comics was one of your first loves. So is that the reason why you chose the comic medium? Because the way, it's brilliantly written, and just the way the story flows and the beats, especially with Dylan and his grandfather, the mother. I mean, you can really see this as a film in the way it's composed.
Yeah. So that all my training and all my work that I've done in film, because I've written some films, I've developed some TV shows, I've done ghost writing on a lot of pretty big films. All my writing training is film writing, but my first introduction to serialized storytelling is through comics. And so I always had that love, but because I couldn't draw, I just never thought to write for them. And it was when I started reading stuff by people like Jeff Lemire and Matt Kint, and guys like that have a very natural filmic quality to their writing. And so in looking at that stuff, and because I read so many comics and because I respect comics and I still read a lot of comics and graphic novels, I knew what I had to do to change it. So the overall structure is for sure still very film-like, but I try to utilize different things that we can do in comics that you can't do in, well, you can do it in film for, you know, millions of dollars, but to be able to take stuff on the page and being able to do that was quite freeing. And to be honest, I loved it. And it's more, I'm way more interested in doing more comics and graphic novels than I am movies. This thing, who knows, maybe someone will want to make a movie about it. I don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to be the person that I did what I wanted to do. And it's a graphic novel story. But it's, yeah, good eye. Cause that's where my training's from is film writing. And so it's very heavily 3-act structure, very heavily, oh, here's the first act. He goes to the old age home. Here's the midpoint. It's like, absolutely. So good eye, because and you caught me. But yeah, that's where it started. It was a very different film. It was way more depressing. It was way more sad and dark. And it's partly the reason I think it didn't happen was because it was this kid, but it was really, really dark. And I actually thought comics actually allows you to play with that a little more. You know, it's not asking you to make everything a Disney movie. It allows you to explore these dark themes while still having a child as your main character.
And that's one of my favorite things reading that book, reading A Better Place, was the fact that it was so grounded in reality. Like, you can take Dylan's situation, I mean, because we've all lost, and no spoilers for those who's going to be watching this. No spoilers. I'm not going to spoil anything. But there's a certain event that happens in the book, and one thing I really loved most, because I'm reading this one particular character, the mother, and you see the frustration. You're frustrated with her because you're just like, this is a child that you're kind of stopping his childhood innocence right now, but you keep telling him to grow up. And then when you reveal the age, I was like, he's 8. Like, what is I was like, what is wrong with you, lady? He is 8 years old.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about what inspired Better Place? Where did you get this idea to write this particular story and to tell Dylan's story?
It's gonna, you know what? It's gonna mean me spoiling some things you didn't want to spoil, but I'm okay with that because it kicks off the story. So, the first person who was close to me that died was my grandfather, and my grandfather, towards the end of his life, had Alzheimer's. So he forgot who I was, like, and that killed me, and that really hurt. But I remember being at his funeral and seeing his body and looking at him and thinking, he's not there. Like, that's not him. He's somewhere else. And I was a teenager at the time, so I wasn't Dylan's age. So, but the imagination part came to me of being told, because I grew up Catholic, being told my whole life all through Catholic school about a better place. And then when we die, we go to a better place. And I imagined, because my grandfather, I didn't see him in there anymore. I imagined, well, at a certain age when I was in Catholic school, I would have thought that would have been an actual place that you could go to and maybe find. And missing my grandfather so much, I would have done that. Because what I also took from my life in Better Place, they pretend to be superheroes together. My grandfather and I used to pretend we were a tag team in wrestling. And he'd throw me off his shoulders and I'd land on some teddy bears and all that. So that was our way of pretending. And my grandfather always encouraged that sort of life. And I grew up with a single mom. And now that I'm a parent and I understand a little more what my mom was going through being a single parent, you know, she always encouraged to grow up. And I think, to be honest, that's a form of trying to protect your child, because if you don't grow up, you're going to get hurt. And I don't want you to get hurt. When I see my daughter's only 4. I just want to wrap her in bubbles and that's it, you know? And so I get the instinct to always want to protect. But I also think when we do that, we can limit that childishness and that imagination and that way of life too early. you know, and that's something I think we should have as adults. You know, we shouldn't ever shut that down completely. We should always sort of live that way, and I think that's why the world likes superhero movies for a reason, you know, and so to always sort of live your life that way and take hold of that. And so that was the germination. And to be honest, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Jerry.
Not yet, but I heard about it.
It's a really small movie with Matt Damon and Casey Affleck, and they're literally just lost and they're just walking around. And I came out of that movie thinking I could imagine a kid the image came to me of just a kid wandering around looking for his grandfather who no longer existed. So the long version of that's where all that sort of led to the story of Better Place.
And that's something I want to further along with the theme of the story as well, is just kind of like we kind of capturing that innocence. Mm-hmm. And you see that with Dylan, is just that he's trying to hold on to this childhood innocence, hold on to something. And I love how the mom could not say the words "he's dead" to him at all. Yeah. Because it was kind of like the confirmation of she's saying it, then she has to actually accept it as well. And I was like, man, this is just such a great character study on just on what it means to lose, mm-hmm. how certain people deal with it. Dylan, of course, he's 8 years old. He doesn't fully grasp what the mother does, and here she is trying to protect mm-hmm. Dylan from the actual inevitable of having that type of conversation. And it's just an absolutely amazing book. So can you tell us a little bit about how that whole creative process came to be? How you got with IDW and how that whole process come to light?
So I can. It's really long. I'm going to do it as quick as possible. So like I said, initially it was going to be a film, and I was working on it with my best friend, and we had this thing, and we wrote this thing, and it just never worked for me. And then fast forward, you know, they kicked around places, and a lot of people liked it, but had trouble with what I said with Kid in the Darkness. And fast forward a couple of years, and I just wanted to make this story, and I wanted to make this book. And so I didn't go to publishers first. I thought maybe I was going to kickstart it. Because I just wanted to make it, and I had some money. And so I hired Sean Daly, whose work I saw just, I think, from backing one of his older Kickstarters. And I just loved his art. And I called him up, and I emailed him, and I pitched him it, and I sent him the half of the script, because the whole story was done, but I'd only adapted about half of it into sort of a comic script. And he came on board, and he started drawing while I finished the script. And then when it was done, and he had drawn it all and lettered it all, I mean, Sean did literally everything except the words I did. Like he did everything else. He was amazing. Once it was done, I planned on kickstarting it, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to send this out to some publishers, see what happens. And Top Shelf, who is publishing this through IDW, they made the books that showed me a way of doing comics and graphic novels outside of superheroes. So like Jeff Lemire's Essex County and Matt Kint's Super Spy, Nate Powell's work too. All those guys inspired me. And so I sent it to Top Shelf as a dream. And then Chris, the publisher, Chris Staros, emailed me back and said, I want to publish this. And so that was it. And you know, we did some changes through editorial, but not a lot. Like it was maybe 10 pages. It's basically being published as is with a couple small changes. And but that whole journey, it's got to be 9-10 years, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the comic journey was maybe 2 years, but just from figuring out the story and writing with my best friend and then rethinking it as a comic and adapting it like that. Yeah, I think it was 9 or 10 years.
Was one of the challenges of writing as opposed to like writing a movie script, because I know comic script format, it varies. Like Marvel has their own ways, like you write panel and, you know, sound effects and things like that. Was it easier to adapt this story into a comic book writing wise compared to like writing it as a film?
It was. You know what I noticed too with comics, if you're, first of all, you can do way more description without pissing anybody off. Like if you put that much description in a film script, the director is like, well, what are you telling me how to direct this film? Like, whereas a comic, I can put in images to Sean. I can take a picture and show him. And I was also just with Sean, I could say, so in these pages, he's on a roller coaster. That's all I know. And then Sean did it, you know, like he's the one who did all that amazing roller coaster scene stuff with all the effects and everything. So I actually found it easier only because I respect and understand comics, and because I think comics allow you to find creative ways to get past certain beats and to use certain beats. Whereas, I mean, you seem just so very film knowledgeable, like, you know, that if there's a plot hole, everybody knows it, and everybody gives you. And I was talking with Jeff Lemire about that, because he's now making a show about one of his comics, and he agreed. He was like, oh yeah, with film, you need to fill that up. You need a lot more story. You need the B story to make sense and wrap in with the A story. Whereas comics, when I think they're at their best is when they're quite simple. Yeah, and you tell one simple story, and you don't try to fill it up with too much other stuff. With film, it's really hard to do that, and so I found it, I don't want to say easier. I think I let myself get away with more writing comics, and maybe that's also because I'm leaning on an artist to help me out, and that I know, like for film, you know, you write the whole thing, and then you don't see it until it's done. And that, whereas with comic, it's a process, and Sean will do 2-3 pages at a time, and that'll allow me to make some rewrites too, and go, oh, I see, now this is your style, I can do this way now. And it also just gets you really excited when the pages start coming in, and it re-inspires you. Where with film, who knows, you know, it's not edited together, it's just raw footage, and you can look at dailies and you go, oh, this is terrible. I've never seen a rough draft of a film and thought it was good. Never. Whereas I'll get 4 pages back from Sean, and I think, oh, this book's going to be good, because it's inspiring, and I can now work with this. Yeah, I was in Spotlight, the movie Spotlight. Yeah, it won Best Picture, right? I saw a rough cut, and I remember after that, I thought, who's going to watch this? This is not good. And it turned out to win Best Picture. So what do I know? I mean, you know, I clearly don't know anything when it comes to that stuff. So I think with comics, it's different in that sense too. You can change it as it's being made.
Yeah, especially when you get the concept art, say like you get the first panel shot, you can literally go back to the artist, even with a sketch, like, you know, change this here, or I think Dylan would do it look like this here, and that entire process. So we have a section where we call roadblocks. What would you say was your biggest challenge when it came to getting a better place, whether it was writer's block from time to time, or like you said, you guys went through you did a couple of changes from time to time. So what would you say was one of your biggest roadblocks?
You know what? It sounds maybe cliche, but the biggest one is confidence. As I'm writing it, I go back over it, and I think, is this even good? Like, and does anyone even care about this other than me? And so it's firstly having to get over that and letting that go, and that it's not up to you to decide whether people will like it or not. All you can do is write what you feel is good and true, and what people think of it is out of your hands. And so I think it's good, but because I wouldn't have put it out there if I didn't, but I don't know if other people are going to think it's good. I'm glad Chris thought it was good. It's tough. In terms of other roadblocks, they were all, to be honest, they were all fun. I mean, in the sense that I'd write it out, I'd see, like you said, I'd see some pages come back, and I'd say, oh, that doesn't work. But then I would just fix it. I mean, and we were able to change things like that. The other thing, that it wasn't necessarily a roadblock, but when I wrote this, I wasn't writing it for a young audience. I was writing it for you and for me, you know, for people who have lived lives and have nostalgia and love comics, and like you said, have potentially lost someone. And then the publisher saw it as a book for young people, and I didn't see it. I didn't see it that way, but you know, I thought they know what they're doing. So a little mini roadblock was just adjusting some things for a young audience. So there were some slightly darker things in the book originally that I sent to Top Shelf that those are some of the things we had to change. And I just needed to be reminded and to remind myself. I was like, oh, kids are going to be reading this, so I can't get too hard on them. And, you know, I also don't think it's too soft. I don't think we sort of sugarcoat anything, but I also don't, we took out some of the very in your face stuff that wasn't necessary for a book that's going to be read by a younger audience.
Nice. And how does it feel now that the journey, you went through the roadblock, you did your origins, now the journey's here, the books are coming out October 5th, if I'm correct. How does it feel? Is it just like, are you?
It's still, I don't even know how to feel. There was these big feelings with each step. Like just finishing the book was a big feeling. Top Shelf coming on board was a good feeling. Seeing the book on websites and people talking about it was another good feeling. And I'm terrified. I mean, I'm absolutely terrified because I don't want people to hate something I did, but people might. sort of that scares me. But at the same thing, to be honest, it's one of the most thrilling things in my life. I've had movies released that don't give me the same feeling. The idea that there's going to be this tangible thing on a shelf fills me with so much joy, and I can't wait to hear people's reactions, to be honest, because like I was telling you earlier, I don't know if people will like it, but I hope they do. And when they do, and if they do, that's going to be such a good feeling. And to be honest, I love this stuff. I love talking about it, and I love talking to people like you who have read it and got it. Like you got it, and you saw things that I hoped people would see and get out of it, and you did. And so that's amazing, man. That's a great feeling.
And two more questions. One is, we always do advice just in case people who are watching are young creators or people who trying to get into, who are on the same journey as you when it comes to storytelling. What advice can you give other indie comic creators, other storyteller writers out there that you would wish that you had that advice when you were starting your journey?
Be brave. If you like comics, find a way to make a comic. I loved comics my whole life and didn't think I could do it, and so I went to movies. Not that that's hard too, but for comic specific, if you love comics and you want to tell your story in a comic way, even if you don't draw, find a way to do it. Check Twitter and Instagram for young up and coming artists who are doing things in a style you think suits your story, because that's what it is too, right? It's not about just finding an artist whose artist you like, it's whose art you like, and that also suits the tone of what you're doing, and trying to get an understanding of that. And also, this is not something you often have to tell people, especially in comics, but read comics. read comics. I get some flack, and it's understandable and understandable with people going, oh, you're just coming over and making a comic, but you're a movie guy. It's like, no, I read comics. I always have, and I still do. And I have, when this book got published, I literally had 10 or 11 film friends of mine to email me and say, how do I make my thing into a comic? and that's my first thing is read some comics. Like, go out and read some comics, understand the structure, understand the pace, understand the tones, all that stuff. Read comics. And then the beautiful thing about comics too is you can start with an 8-page sequence. Get together with an artist, because everyone says, oh, make short comics. I'm like, you don't even have to make short comics. Just in your longer story, start with a story beat, that's like 5 pages, and see, oh, you know what, this is, I think the biggest thing people, especially coming from film and other kinds of writing, coming to comics, way less words. Like people fill in panels with all these words. It's like, let the art speak, let the artist help you and speak for you. And I think when you start to actually create comics, you'll see that a lot faster. You'll see, man, there's 47 words in this word bubble. I can do this in 10. I have to do this in 10.
Yeah.
So that's that's my advice for that, and same, like, and look at all, like you said about seeing this and it felt like movie structure. Watch good movies, watch especially things like Pixar movies. People rag on Pixar movies and Marvel movies, but those things are structured so well that I highly recommend watching those simply for story structure, because that's pretty universal, and those movies, in my mind, do it the best.
I definitely agree with that. And we are going to wrap this up. It's been a pleasure, folks. Everybody, Better Place comes out October 5th. Definitely, this is a must read. It is such a great story, Duane. It is an amazing story. Darling's Journey. I cannot wait to see if you're going to do another comic book.
I am. I'm working on it now. I want to do, because I did the single story, I want to try doing something more like a 5-6 issue thing. I want to do like a limited series type thing, and then maybe if that's successful, I'll do a long ongoing, because that's the goal. But yeah, I want to next try an individual issue thing, and I'm about halfway through.
Oh wow! Okay, so there you got the exclusive right there, folks. He's working on another one. Please plug if there's any way our viewers can follow you on, if you have social media, if there's a way to
I'm on Twitter the most. I just recently joined Instagram, but I find it confusing.
Join the club.
I don't know. But yeah, go on Twitter. I've already started on Twitter. It's just at Duane Murray. I started posting some of the guest pages, which you've seen because you've read the book. So some of the pages by guest artists, but I posted them as original art, so there's no spoilers. To give you an idea of some of the great people that I also got on board to draw on this book.
Okay, so everybody make sure you follow, and we're going to wrap this up. Duane, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us here at Tacos Against Imaginative Visions. And everybody else, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We'll catch you next time. Later days.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Imaginative Visions Journeys. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from Imaginative Visions, you can visit imaginativevisions.com.